Hello, welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto. Got a good email from Brian who told me about a funny story that happened to him and his family. Not funny, but interesting. And asked if I'd ever heard of this before and if it's likely a scam. And what happened is this. His daughter was driving to work one morning and was following too close to a vehicle in front of her. The vehicle in front abruptly stopped and she rear-ended the car. Now, the car was an older Cadillac sedan, which he says was roughly probably blue booked around $5,000. And the police were called, and his daughter was written up, and insurance was exchanged. And so now this happened in Michigan, and Michigan's got what we call no fault. Now, the law is going to be changing shortly, it appears, but generally speaking, in Michigan, when you get in a car accident, your insurance takes care of you, my insurance takes care of me. So when you rear end somebody, if they don't have collision, too bad. It's a weird thing to do, but that's how it works. Now, you can sue in Michigan for a small amount of money, which was designed basically to cover your deductible, so that if somebody does in fact hit you and you don't have collision, you can generally sue them for I think $1,000. And if you do have collision, you can still get the $1,000 and you just apply it towards your deductible. And that's the thinking there. So after this happened, he says he got a phone call from the owner of the car who said that he was curious about how I was going to pay for his damages. This is, of course, the man speaking who wrote me the email. And he says that he told the guy, said, I'm sorry, but, Michigan's no fault. You pay for yours, I pay for mine. I could be liable for up to $1,000 of your damages, but that's it. And he said the man then claimed, well, I have spoken to the law offices of, and he named an attorney who advertises heavily in Michigan. I think his ads might run before my videos. And he claimed that attorney had said he would take this man's case. And the man who sent me the email said, well, if that's the case, I'll wait till I hear from him. And he says this was about 7-8 months ago and nothing's ever happened since. And he goes, is this a scam? And now here's the interesting thing. We don't know if the person staged this. That is, they actually got in front of her and hit their brakes on purpose trying to cause an accident. It's certainly a scam to call up somebody and say, hey, look, you owe me several $1,000s for the damage done to my car, when in Michigan, the most you can get is $1,000. So the idea that, well, I called this attorney on TV and he said, well, number one, when you called the attorney on TV, he didn't talk to you. There's no way you can get him on the phone. Okay. He does not take phone calls from strangers. I just know that for a fact. But this reminded me of a story I've heard of out of several states, but I remember reading about it in the Los Angeles Times when I went to law school in California. And in California, they've got a major problem with insurance fraud. Now, this happens everywhere. But Los Angeles, they'll tell you, is the insurance fraud capital of the world when it comes to automobile accidents. And it's a couple different things that come into play. But I remembered reading about this, and so I actually did a search for it. And I found several articles, including the article entitled Swoop and Squat. Staged car accidents, insurance fraud rise in LA. I know it sounds bad, but it's not. This story is from 2014, though. Staged car accidents and insurance fraud are on the rise in Southern California, and the National Insurance Crime Bureau and the LAPD are fighting back. Together, they produced some high-definition videos with reenactments of typical car accident scams. And they point out that there are organized groups out there doing this. Simply run the phrase staged car accident California, and you'll find a whole plethora of articles on this. What happens is these teams are often working with several vehicles and several drivers, and they entrap unwitting motorists into forking over cash to pay for damages and to defraud insurance companies by filing bogus injury claims resulting from the phony fender benders. And so here's what happens. There's several different scenarios, but they try to make it look like somebody else is responsible for a rear end or a sideswept collision that they themselves cause. So, for instance, what they'll do is they'll actually go out with 3 cars, okay? And then you're driving along, and a car pulls in front of you in some multi-lane freeway, and then another car pulls in front of them, and just as a car is passing you, the car in the front stomps on their brakes. The car in the middle stomps on their brakes. But they knew it was coming, you didn't. And you can't get over to the side because there's this other car here, and you don't have enough time to get off to the shoulder, and so you rear end car number 2. Car 1 and car 3, well, they're part of the plan, but car 1 takes off. They're gone. Car 3 pulls over and goes, I saw the whole thing. You rear-ended them. What's wrong with you? You were following too close and you rear-ended them. And so they called the police, and the car that got rear-ended goes, I was just driving along and these people rear-ended me. And when asked, why'd you stomp on your brakes? The car in front of me stomped on their brakes. And car 3 confirms it and goes, yeah, I saw it too. Some guy in car 1 stomped on his brakes, but this car here was following too close. It was their fault. If they hadn't been following too close, nobody would have gotten hurt here, especially because car 2 did not hit car 1. Okay? So this car here is clearly at fault. And so this driver, and so what they'll do is they'll drive out and look for somebody who appears to have an expensive car and lots of insurance. And then meanwhile, the person in the car that got hit, somebody go, oh, by the way, oh, my neck hurts. Oh, my neck. Oh, and my spleen hurts. Oh my gosh, my ovaries are inflamed. And next thing you know, there's all kinds of insurance claims being filed and probably lawsuits. So that's one of the Swoop and Squat staged accident scenarios. And the scam can also involve the collusion of auto repair shops, doctors, chiropractors, and lawyers who all participate. The car the victim hits may be filled with passengers recruited to get injured and file claims. And that's a story I remember reading about when I was in California. They actually figured this out because what they would do is they'd go find 2 volunteers and go, do you want to make some money? And who doesn't want to make money? So they'd ask them to sit in a vehicle, but it'd be a station wagon, and they'd fill the back with spare tires to help, brace the collision. And then they would do this, but they would do this with a semi. So what happens is there's 3 cars driving along. Car number 1, which is the accident car, pulls right in front of a semi. Car number 2 pulls in front of that car and stomps on its brakes just as car 3 passes by and boxes the semi's, tractor in. And so what happens is, of course, the big rig can't stop, rear ends the car filled with the used tires and the victims, and car 1 speeds off, and car 3 sticks around to be a handy little witness and go, I saw the whole thing. That big rig guy's out of control. He rammed that car. And yeah, there was a car up front that hit its brakes, but there was plenty of room. And the state cop walks up and goes, wait a second, why are there all these used tires in the back of this thing? And why do these people not own this vehicle or whatever it might be? And they figured there was just a whole bunch of people doing this as an industry. And it's sad. I mean, I actually knew of an attorney here in Michigan, and I had heard his name often enough just in the various circles I traveled in. And at one point in time, I remember reading a story about how the FBI executed a search warrant on his office and kicked down the door. And he'd been filing a lot of personal injury claims involving auto accidents that were being all treated by the same doctor. And somebody had realized there was just too much of this going on for this to be legitimate. What are the odds? And sure enough, there were charges laid, as they say. So it also turns out now that we've got young men on bicycles in the San Fernando Valley who are throwing themselves in front of passing automobiles and then demanding small amounts of cash from the drivers. Some of these guys are actually getting hit, officials say, and the driver really thinks he might be at fault. And they say that the guy will actually say, just give me a couple $100 and I'll leave. And some people say, something for $200, I'll pay the guy to leave. So there are an increase in the number of staged accidents on area freeways where higher speeds can make the practice deadly. And this is happening more and more in stretches of roads, specifically where there are no traffic cameras. So they're not going to do this at a busy intersection where there might be cameras or in front of a business that might have video cameras, but they're going to go find a stretch of freeway that's got no cameras on it. And then what they'll do is they'll just, drive back and forth and wait until they can find the right car and then just box it in and boom, stage an accident. So yeah, but with respect to the original email I got, I don't know if that would be a staged accident or not, but trying to shake somebody down for money, I can see someone making that phone call, but then threatening and saying, well, I've spoken to a high-profile attorney, and he said he's going to sue you on my behalf. Trust me, he ain't going to sue you for a couple grand. That's not what this guy does. But the idea is that there are staged accidents out there and groups of people doing this, trying to rip off the insurance companies. And, of course, the scary part of all of this is that, money doesn't get just printed. Yes, that's my trigger to all the sovereign citizens in the audience. Money's not just printed. It's not like the government can just print the stuff whenever they feel like it. Money's got to come from somewhere. And so the insurance companies don't just print money. They take in money from their insureds by way of premiums, and they put that in a pot, and then they pay off claims from that pot. And if they've done their math right, there's money at the end that they get to then divide up, and that's profits. Okay? And so when bad claims get paid, or even if they've got to defend themselves against a bad claim and don't pay it, it's still a cost to the insurance company. And while I do occasionally criticize insurance companies for what they do, I don't suggest that this is right that they be ripped off. And so when they have to pay out fraudulent claims or defend fraudulent claims, it drives up the cost for everyone else. So your premiums and my premiums and the premiums of everyone else, people who buy insurance, they all go up to pay for these crazy claims of the swoop and squat people. They got to come up with a better name. You got to have a better name. Ponzi scheme. That's a cool name for a ripoff, right? The Ponzi scheme, right? Swoop and squat, not so good. But again, that's the insurance accident scam argument. And again, with respect to the guy who sent me the email, don't know if that was a scam attempt or not, whether it's done intentionally. I've not actually seen that particular one done in such a low dollar value. But the other ones are real. So questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.